Welcome to another episode of The Giants Guys. The guys today are hanging out with the Queen, Giants' very own Madelyn Burke. Woo! What's happening, people? Yup, that's right. The podcast you love to hate is back. It's another episode of The Giants Guys. How can you beat that on a Monday night? Yes, it's a Monday night. You'll have it on Tuesday. I gave Fresh has the night off. The Truth has the night off, and Spiro has the night off. So who's in the lab with me? I've got Jeff El Jefe. I've got Eli. Good vibes. And as promised, and I want to say this correctly because this is a sister who bleeds blue with us, the one and the only Madelyn Burke. How are you?
So happy to be here. It's an honor to join you fellas on this Monday night. Thank you so much. And also I like a little vibe of the do music coming in.
Yeah, well, when it's all produced up, it kind of actually will go together. Like, you're like, why is this guy like doing that thing? Like, there'll actually be a bumper in the beginning. It'll make sense later on.
No, it's better.
Cool. So I'm going to just give you some softball stuff. And I wrote it down because I wanted to make sure I got it right. You've got a pretty kick-ass, amazing resume. And I mean, you've worked for brands like Fox, ESPN, Comcast Sportsnet, Bleacher Report, MLB, Sports Illustrated. You went from covering the sport to being the sport. So how hard a change is that? Like, you're not covering the news. You are the news now. Like, for all you people out there. I mean, you know, Madelyn is works for the Giants. She's a host. You see her all the time. And I'll tell you why we're really excited to have you for a lot of reasons, but you're going to give us a totally different perspective. We interview players usually like every other week, and we've gotten accustomed, and Jeff will tell you, the very first interview we did was Russ Salzberg. And we looked at each other. I go, Jeff, was that gold? He was like, who knew? So we started bringing in not just the players, but the media personalities. So like, we're really excited about your perspective. And I really mean it. Like, you went from all those, and I left a couple out. The list was too long. It was huge. Yeah. It was great. Your resume is outstanding. It's a lot to be proud of. How do you do it though? Like, what's the shift? Because like I said, you are the sport now. Is there a big change?
I mean, first of all, that's generous. If you've seen my vertical, you'd rethink that statement. I am not the sport. I cannot. Yeah, I'm not athletic at all, but I can talk about it. I can keep y'all entertained. And it's, you know, it's great being around it. And I think that it's a different perspective, right? Covering a team or a sport from essentially part of the organization as opposed to outside, because you see a lot, you're kind of in the machine a little bit more. But you also are a media member. You also are going to the press conferences. You're also not in the players meetings. I'm not in the wide receiver meeting under what's going on there. And so it's a little bit of like it's like a gradient, right? But it's a great perspective, and it does kind of feel like you're a part of something, you know. And this is my 6th season now with the Giants, and in each year my role has grown and gotten more involved and entrenched. And you know, this is my 3rd season doing the post-game show now. I have done the radio sideline for a little bit of it, and you know, it's a great organization to be a part of, you know, and it's such a family feel over there at the Giants. And so
what about the challenge? Like, so if you're at, let's say, Sports Illustrated, you're at Bleacher Report, there's different challenges. Now you're, like you said, you're part of the machine in some capacity, and we would consider you part of the machine.
Yeah.
So is it, let's say, from a responsibility or maybe a challenge or even stressful? Like, is it take a whole different type of attitude where before you're like, I'm the media, I'm covering these events. Now you're part of the machine. Like you said, like it probably unfolds a little differently. No?
Right. Well, I think it's also kind of on brand for my personality, right? I'm never that person that's like a dog out to get you. Like, I got you, like whatever. That's not me. So, and I'm also somebody who's very like the eternal optimist to my detriment, which has also helped me with like, you know, some of these post-game shows when we've had a tough loss. I'm like, I'm able to find the silver lining and able to see, well, hey, you know what, there's a spot to be proud of. And there's
we now have a miss glass half full.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the guys on my team,
she's adopted.
She's
in
team,
it.
Spiro, he's always positive about everything. So his Twitter handle is Mr. Glass Half Full. Now we have
for now it's Mr. Glass Half Full. Let's give it a little time here.
I mean, you just gotta keep your cup full in that way.
Absolutely.
But it's kind of, it's a gift and a curse, but it's also too, there can be challenges, like in the external media, for example. If there is something that hasn't been announced officially by the team, but reporters break it or something like that, then they talk about it. But as a member of the team media, it's not really my role to be breaking news or to be telling you like, oh, this guy's not, it's more to be delivering it than breaking it. And I'm kind of comfortable in that space.
You are comfortable in that space.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
I'm not trying to play got him with anybody.
Yeah. Well, listen, and Jeff and Eli, they've been with me for a while. I think that's why we've had such a successful run with the players, because we're like, look, I don't really care how many tackles you missed. Guys miss tackles. We're like, you know what? I'm like, what's it like, living in Oregon and getting drafted by the Giants and coming across the country and realize like, holy shit, it's New York. Like, right. We try to build their personalities. The podcast of, being the Giants guys, we've always tried to give people the behind the scenes kind of stuff.
So listen, before you kickstart there, keep going. 2015, Madelyn Burke comes to New York City to launch the FanDuel Insider. Just tell us how you got that phone call. How was it coming from LA to New York City to actually do that? And then let's go in. How did the Giants give you a call per se?
Wow. First of all, look at Eli doing his research over here.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And if you think about it, Eli, too, like FanDuel 5 years ago to what FanDuel is now is completely night and day. So you're breaking a lot of new ground back then.
Absolutely. I mean, you guys all remember that time that every time you turned on the TV, it was like FanDuel, DraftKings, promo code LAMP, sign up here. It was everywhere. Every subway stop, every commercial, every billboard was daily fantasy, because that was a burgeoning industry. And I was living in LA at the time, where I'm from, and they were originally going to be developing a content vertical to go along with the daily sports betting, to kind of give advice and to deliver, game reaction or game previews. And because of my experience in the NBA, I covered the Clippers for 4 seasons. I was kind of really more NBA centric, but I could do NFL because I always was an NFL fan. And I always thought I would live in LA, maybe move to San Francisco if I left, but I'm a very California girl. And so when the job came about, it was based in a studio in Santa Monica. So we were going through the process, we're going through the motions, and about 3 weeks before we were set to start, the producer calls me and says, listen, we need somebody based in New York. We are going to have our studios in New York. And I just said, what? I'm in, let's go. And at that point, I was on a month-to-month lease. I was kind of like pot committed at that point. So I thought, why not, let's just go for it. And I sold my car, moved out of my apartment, moved across the country, lived on my friend Johnny's couch for weeks in Brooklyn.
Shout out to Johnny.
Yeah, shout out to Johnny Sweet, his actual name.
Wow, that's such a cool name.
Heck yeah, man.
And I was like, okay. And it took me like about a month to realize, like, I just did this because it all happened so fast. But then a couple months into me, I sign a lease, I get an apartment, I move in, I settle. I'm like, great. And I get a call. Hey, don't come into work today or at all, because the attorney general thinks this might be gambling. So we're going to just shut it all down. Because as you guys remember, early in 2016, the attorney general was like, you know what, this might not be legal. And so FanDuel and DraftKings were like lights down. And so I'm like, oh, fun. I just signed a year lease in the most expensive city, and now I don't have a job. So,
oh my God.
Johnny Sweet's getting a call real fast.
But, fortunately this wasn't my first day of school. I had been around in this industry. I had known some people and was able to kind of pull together some freelance opportunities. Started working with Bleacher Report at the time, developed a great relationship with them, and filled in over the years. Had a fantasy football show with them a couple of years ago with Matt Camp, and I have done a lot of work with them. Started working with MLB.com on a freelance basis, and kind of, was just kind of being a hired gun out in these streets. Like, who needs content? Let's go. And, and then found my way to Don Sperling, who was like, you know what? I see some potential, and he hired me on to be a part of the New York Giants broadcast team, and the rest is history. And he has kind of like been like, all right, we're going to put you here now. We're going to put you there now, and really kind of helped me grow into the role that I have with that organization today.
And you're very flexible too.
I got a quick question on that, because you really were open to taking a job anywhere, like from LA, as long as it was in the right direction that you wanted your career to go. So you probably weren't a Giants fan whatsoever before this. Does this job kind of make you a Giants fan? Like, do you feel like that in your heart now?
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, I grew up a Vikings fan. I grew up in LA, but both of my parents are from Minnesota. So growing up, born and raised in Southern California, but we didn't really have a team in LA there. And I grew up watching like Culpepper to Moss, like those years. And so I was like, all right, I like this team also. And so that, I mean, my dad put me in a Scott Studwell jersey when I was a year old, and I was the rest of history.
Wow.
So yes, I grew up a Vikings fan, but being a part of the Giants organization is kind of, I mean, it's very similar to the way my role happened with the Clippers, where I grew up a Lakers fan in LA and then got a job with the Clippers. My first season, I was kind of a closeted Lakers fan, but I was like, all right, but I want these guys to do well. But then you get to know and get to vibe with the people around it, and you want your colleagues to do well. You want the people you work with to succeed. And so that's kind of how it translates. And, you know, being a part of this Giants organization, like I've said, it's so great to be a part of something with so much history and so much like of a family vibe to it. But of course I root for them. And like in selfish reasons, I'm like, come on, do good. So it makes my job easier.
Same.
Invested. Like, these are the guys I talk to every day. These are the guys I work with. I'm like, come on, you can do it. Like,
no, I can relate. I tell this story to these guys all the time. They're probably sick of hearing it, but for like 11 years, I worked for CBS Sports in Philadelphia, and I live very close to Philadelphia. And, you know, I got very friendly with the players because we used to do post-game show with Andy Reid, and then we would do, you know, and we just do events with all the players. And after a while, I was like, you know, I don't really hate the Eagles. I hate the fans, like, you know, and because they, you know, like there were just guys, like I went to the hospital when Sheldon Brown had his baby Dion. Like I went to the hospital and delivered a gift. Like you got to learn them as people, and you rooted for them. Like I could never root for the team, right? But I understand when you have some vested interest, or, you know, CBS, we broadcasted the game, like where my sister station was WFAN in New York. So while you were broadcasting the Giants, we were broadcasting the Eagles. Ooh, so well, so that's what makes the story funny, is that people be all the time like, you work for the team, you're around the team. I'm like, look, man, A, you can't pick your parents. 2, I've had season tickets in my family since 1965, and I've only missed 6 games since 1984. It's not going to change for anything. I'm like, I'll root for a guy here and there to do well. I really want, you know, Zach Ertz to do well, you know, like, because they're good guys. But no, I'm not rooting for the team. So I can relate what you're saying, but because I went down the turnpike, you went across the country. So it's a big difference.
A little different, yeah. And also, too, it's not like this. I mean, like, candidly, there are some people in the building that are Cowboys fans, and I'm like, how do you do it? I'm not going to out them, but they're there.
Wait, what's strange about you saying that is that the Cowboy fan actually let someone know they were a Cowboy fan. How do you do that?
Yeah, but I don't think, the Eagles is a different fan base. Love it, but love the competitive spirit. But I remember we did the draft in Philly, and when we do the draft, they usually send me out and do a live shot. And it was so vulgar, some of the things the Eagles fans were doing, that they had to cut the feed, and Bob Papa back in the studio had to apologize. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Home for what you saw.
Yeah, it was.
So out of all hostile territory, I guess you could say Philadelphia might be the worst on your list, I'm guessing.
I think, you know, considering the camera guy I was working with, Mike Becton, was wearing Giants gear and somebody tried to throw hands, I was like, okay, let's, you know, we're just.
Oh, we're out of here.
Yeah, we're just doing a job.
Who would have guessed?
Doing a job.
Who would have guessed Philly would be like that, though? I mean, really.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, working for Giants.com, I just want to know if there's any perks as far as like walking through the locker room. Is there any perks where you could grab Saquon and be like, hey, come do this interview real quick? I know you guys have a million things to do. Let me get a moment of your time and kind of pull a couple players in.
Do they let you do that?
Do you have that? Oh, do they? Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, right now we are still under COVID protocols to an extent, so we still don't have locker room access. But prior to, you know, the end of the world days and all that good stuff,
Right.
yeah, I mean, we would, you know, have locker room access, and you know, I think the best part of that is honestly not those on the camera conversations, but off, you know, because so often you know, I don't want to be the person who walks up to you every time and says like, hey, I need something, you know.
Yeah,
Sometimes
sure.
it's nice to be like, oh, hey, let me check in on you. How are you? How's your dog? I heard you got a new dog. Oh my God, congrats, Saquon, on the new sneakers or what have you. And like, you know, all that kind of stuff. And those moments are really what builds that trust and kind of shows these guys like, I'm not trying to got you. Like, I'm just some girl who's here who's like, let me tell your story. Let me make sure that these Giants fans know how awesome of a person you are, as well as how good at football you are, as well as, you know, some random fun facts about.
I'm sure they want to trust you too. I mean, you're in the building all the time. They see you every day. I'm sure there's a trust factor there too.
Yeah, and I think that helps. And like, you know, as you mentioned, like Eli, as you mentioned with the, you know, pulling guys aside and having those conversations, if I were to do it, they know like, okay, this is a conversation where you're not going to call me out and say like, oh, what about this or what about that? Some of the questions that some other people might ask, and no disrespect to those people who are just doing their job, but that's not my job. And I think that they understand that, so they feel a little safer. Like if they've had a bad game and they know, you know, some of the things that might be coming their way, they also know that like, okay, this might not necessarily be that, because that's not my role. My role is to be like, okay, let me ask you, do you like pizza or hot dogs?
Well, you've been there 5.
Also very important, by the way, and I don't know if any of you guys saw it, Nets Media Day, David Letterman was asking all the important questions. Yeah, Kevin Durant.
Yes.
Why
go into it.
Called KD. And my biggest question is, does Kevin Durant know who Dave Letterman is? Because if not, like, we got to sit him down and just, because I don't know if his poker face is that good or if he just didn't know who Dave Letterman was.
I would think he didn't know who Dave Letterman was.
I would, unfortunately.
And Dave's rocking the big beard still, right?
Yes.
But he's been rocking the big beard since the Netflix show. And I mean, he's done so much beard.
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't that long ago that he was still on late night.
I don't know. He's been out.
KD's not that young, though. I feel like KD should know. That's like he's a well-known guy.
Well, maybe KD is just a guy that's just focused and into himself a little bit, maybe. I don't know. But, you know, you just kind of have that poker face on, and it's business as usual to answer them questions. I'll shoot him some bail and say that.
I feel like KD spends enough time on Twitter, it's hard to miss who Dave Letterman is.
I agree.
All right, fair enough.
That's fire.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
All right, I have a question. We were fortunate enough to interview some pretty cool players, and we've gotten to like know them. We've kind of gotten friendly with them, and they tell us, Jeff, is it us? We have gotten some absolutely crazy stories from every one of these guys. I mean, like from Tollefson telling us that he dick punched Tom Brady, to Snee throwing up before the game, to what was Chase Blackburn told us, you know, who's still a coach in the league, told us he has aspirations of being a head coach someday because, you know, special teams coaches are in vogue. I don't know. I mean, just they always tell us fun story. Jake Ballard.
Well, listen, Brandon London also told us him and Steve Smith painted the town red when they went on the road. Yeah. The was. So that was a great story as well.
Brandon paints the town red on the regular, and he's not bad saying that.
Ouch.
He knows it's true.
So, I think he's got the streets on speed dial, and I'm here for it.
He's the man.
I was going to ask you, like, do you have a 5 years? You've seen a lot of guys come in the locker room, leave the locker room. You know, you have a favorite player or want something that you just connect with that, like, someone's like, hey, Madelyn, we're going to happy hour, we're going to dinner, or we're going to catch a movie, or hey, you know, what are you doing this summer? Whatever. Like, is there one player that just like, man, I just really got to be good friends with that individual?
I think, you know, there's a lot of really great guys that come and go from this team, but I'll tell you a good story. This is actually good. So recently with Eli's jersey retirement and induction to the Ring of Honor, I posted a video on my Instagram of, you know, the Super Bowl 42 trophy, and then zoomed in on me accidentally standing behind him in my brunette phase, which was awkward. That's another story, but that is a segue, because what I used to do when I was in college, one of the ways I got into this business in the first place was when I was in college, I worked as a PA and a runner. So Monday Night Football would come to Arizona, and the first game I ever worked was that Cardinals-Bears game with Devin Hester return, no offensive touchdowns, and Denny Green. You want to crown him, crown him. And long story long, that parlayed into working Super Bowl 42, and worked that Super Bowl, ended up on camera accidentally, and parlayed that into working as a runner for the following Super Bowl, which was in Tampa. And that Super Bowl happened to be the same weekend of my 21st birthday, because I was born at halftime of Super Bowl 22, the Doug Williams game. And so Super Bowl weekend is always around my birthday. So Super Bowl 43 in Tampa, it is the Cardinals and the Steelers.
Yeah.
And my birthday that night, my friend and I decided to go out. I'm like, all right, we're going to go to the Super Bowl party. It's your birthday. And we walk in. And the first person who I encounter in this party, my friend Louisa and I encounter, is Jerry Jones. And Louisa, of course, just being the friend that she is, goes, it's her birthday, because it was my birthday and we were celebrating my 21st birthday.
Good
and
win,
so
man.
He's like, come on, honey, let me get you a drink.
Of
so
course
Jerry
he did.
Jones got me my first legal drink on my 21st birthday.
Hey, that's awesome.
And it was a Malibu pear and pineapple juice, which is a very sweet, girly drink. But I was like, this is great. Let's go. So
now, did you enjoy the drink?
Jerry Jones?
First legal drink. I gotta, you know.
Did he have a drink with you?
I went to Arizona State. Yeah. And then we, you know, drinking. Took a couple photos, and I was like, there we go. So that was my first legal drink on my 21st birthday at Super Bowl 43 in Tampa.
That's epic.
That's awesome. Hey, so quick question. You're more of the veteran on the set of the Giants game show. Does David Deal or Victor Cruz, do you have to give them like pointers, or do they ask you pointers while you're on set to say, hey, am I doing this right, or whatever the case is? Did you ever get those type of conversations with them, or do they just full go and know what they're doing?
Oh man, they're great. I mean, all the guys that I work with are so good at being co-hosts. David Deal and Sean O'Hara, those two, you just kind of like, hey, what's up? And they could talk for 40 minutes if you wanted them to, because they have so much insight into this game. It makes my job so easy. And Vic is the same way too. And unfortunately, we haven't gotten to work together in a while, but they're all like just so, they have such good insight that it's just like an organic thing. And we spend so much time together through the season and kind of in and out of the building that the back and forth is there. It's just a conversation about like, oh my gosh, or we'll be watching a game together and just talking about like, did that just happen? And then we can kind of parlay that conversation into the post-game show. But by no means am I coaching any of these guys up. They are absolutely making my job a cakewalk by just their wealth of knowledge.
So humble, so humble.
They've all made that transition really well, though, from player to media. So I really liked your segment, the 50 yards with Madelyn Burke. So question on that, who was your favorite 50-yard segment with? And is there a player you would love to do it with?
Man, 50 yards. There were so many good ones. I think
I'm always like, walk slower, Madelyn, walk slower.
Oh yeah, there was one where we went 50 yards. Brad Wing and I spent the entire 50 yards talking about the tattoo that Odell bought him as a birthday gift of a tiger that took up like his whole calf. Or I was like, I don't know. And then they got mad at me, like, you gotta ask more questions. I was really interested in this.
Yeah. I would imagine pacing is challenge. That's the challenge. How do you wrap it up in 50 yards?
The pacing is the challenge, and also when you're peppering somebody with questions, sometimes you're like, what else can I ask you? So I end up asking things that are just like I mentioned earlier, like, do you like pizza or hot dogs better? Like, who cares? Is a hot dog a sandwich? Like, but these are things that come out of my mouth because you're thinking fast and you're like,
you have to shoot it more than once, or can you rock one take?
We do one take.
Wow.
It's better that way.
If we didn't nail it, it's like, well.
So who's the best? Who's the best 50-yard? That's
a tough one. I feel like, I mean, maybe that Brad Wing one, I think this is the first one that came to mind.
If it stands out that much, then.
yeah, so captivated by the tattoo story.
Was it an LSU tiger, I assume?
Must
Had to be branded, right?
Wait, was Wing an LSU guy? I mean, I
mean,
know Odell was, but
yeah, he that they knew each other. They played together in college.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
why I know that, I don't know, but they did.
I mean,
so Madelyn, who's some of the people that inspire you in your business today?
oh my gosh. Well, a lot actually. There's so many talented people in my business. I think one of the people that I looked up to the most is the late Craig Sager. And one thing that I take from him is that every time he spoke, he said something that was of value. Like he didn't do a halftime hit or a post or an interview or a sideline hit that was just like, they need to do better on offense and do better on defense. Back to you. Like he always had substance. And I think it's easy as a broadcaster to kind of fall into that, like, I don't know what to say, so let me just say something here.
Yeah, and to fill a spot.
Yeah, and I think that there's more to it than filling a spot, and I think it takes a lot of dedication to your craft and skill to be able to offer something every time you are on air, and to be able to say something that somebody hasn't heard before, hasn't provide some context and nuance. I also think that there's just like such a wealth of talented women that are coming into the industry, that are in the industry, that have prevailed. I mean, Doris Burke, legend, not related, wish I was.
I was
by the way, that the piece you did on Doris Burke was absolutely amazing, but continue, please go right ahead.
But yeah, no, she's a legend. She's somebody who I think really can do any role. She can be color, she can be play-by-play, she can be sideline, and she doesn't have to do the classic, oh, well, the women are in the sideline and the men are in the booth. Like she can show that, like, hey, we can do it all. And then also just across the league, there are so many people that are in a role similar to mine. We actually have a group chat with, I believe, like there's 28 of us in it now.
That's cool.
Female reporters.
Nice.
And best practices or what?
It's so many conversations, and it varies from like, hey, what's going on with you guys with tears, and what's going on with you guys, or what kind of eyelashes do you wear on a game day? And every conversation, but it's all this stuff that like women have to deal with in the industry, and it's so great. And I mean, I have to turn the notifications off because sometimes you'll come back to your phone and be like 100 text messages, but it's great to have that kind of resource. And we joke it's like a little sorority, but it's like there's so many women that are doing comparable jobs, and it's nice to be able to talk to somebody who knows what you do. And
they all get it. Yeah,
because you talk to your friends about your job, right? But they don't really know what your day-to-day looks like. They can't really offer you, they can say, well, I'll do this, that. They don't
after a while you stop telling them because you're like, oh, forget it.
Right.
They're not going to help.
But this is like a group of people that all get it, so it's really nice to have as well.
That's awesome.
Right. Jeff, you got a question for me?
Eli Manning, you brought him up. He's been in the building now. He's, and you're in a really cool position. You're just in between the team and the fans. So you're not necessarily a beat writer, but you're like part of the team, and you just relay that to the fans. So that's cool. So all this Eli Manning talk recently, we're all pumped up about the game. Just wondering what you've seen his impact of now having a different role with the team. Is he in Daniel Jones' ear? Is he helping? Is he really involved in any of the X's and O's, or is he way out of that stuff?
Well, he's in the upstairs. So like upstairs, downstairs, like downstairs is like the team, the coaches, all that. And the upstairs is like the corporate, the marketing, the ticket sales and all that. And, but also the front office. That being said, he and Daniel Jones have a good relationship. They keep in touch. DJ's been candid about, hey, I still reach out to him and ask him questions. What do you see here and what have you? And, but that's one thing too that we really felt this last weekend when he had his jersey retired and was inducted into the Ring of Honor, is just how much, if anybody had any question, how much he means to this organization. Like, there you go. I mean, the way that he just kind of, fans love him, the organization loves him, the fact that he's played his entire career here, didn't miss a single game due to injury, and was able to kind of show up and work his tail off day in and day out, and just kind of set such a good example of how to be a quarterback, how to be a football player, how to be a
pro.
Yeah, it was just a pro. And I think
in New York, of all places.
In New York, and it's hard. And I think that's, and it was very tactical too, because a lot of people are so surprised watching these Monday Night Football Peyton and Eli Manning casts, or, you know, watching him on Twitter. They're like, look at him, he's got a personality. But he's always been that guy. He's just been very cagey and guarded about and selective about who he shows that to, because he understood, like you said, Jeff, about like, this is New York. Like, if I have too much fun with it, they can eat me alive, or they can twist that, or, you know, I'm going to end up on the back page of the New York Post being, you know, being sarcastic.
Very, very strategic on his part for 16 years on giving just enough. Because listen, there are days where you hated him and days you love them, but now you realize what you don't have now that it's gone, right? And you realize, like, you know what? Oh, it's more than just being a quarterback. It's being a liaison for the team. It's being the face of the franchise. It's being a quote unquote New Yorker, because he's still here. We were just interviewing Kevin Boss last week, and he was like, you know, he's like, man, he's like, I'm coming back. He's like, you know, I'm going to see all my old friends. I'm bringing the wife, leaving the kids home. And I was like, you know, do you come back often? He's like, no. He's like, but I'm still tight with all those guys. And he's like, I'm the only one that moved away. He's like, oh, Harris, he's like the 5 or 6 guys that he hangs around with, and he basically were the linemen and the tight ends, right? He's like, they're all still there. He's like, they're New Yorkers. He's like Soibert and O'Hara and Eli and Tuck, they're New Yorkers now. So like the area, the city, you know, New Jersey, Connecticut, they identify with him, I think, in a different way now. And you realize that personality probably always was there, but, but he really couldn't afford to give it to you because fans are ruthless and you don't want to let him in too far.
Right. Well, and it's also too, it's like, you want to see, okay, do I want to show you this side of me? Can I trust you to handle this side of me and not take advantage of it or what have you? And I think that he was a little reserved, and I respect him. And I think that takes a lot of skill to keep that whole personality guarded for 16 years.
He was, you could tell there was a sense of humor behind his lines, and he had like those little witty lines here and there. But I mean, you look at Tom Brady, who was a different guy in New England for all those years, and you leave that situation. Now he's a little more free to be himself and say these things and have more fun. And I don't know, any story we got
stumbling off a boat and
like
exactly.
But all these guys, they always said Eli was like the prankster in the locker room and always having fun and always bringing guys together. And he was, you know, he wasn't a rah guy. He was not a loud one. That just wasn't his style. So you just respect him even more for that, for what he did.
He's that dry sense of humor. Like you'll hear something and then it'll take a beat and be like, wait, was
that a dig? Was that a dig? Yes.
That was a thinker, Eli.
Absolutely. Now
I got a little bit of a harder question for you.
Oh, good.
Sorry, Eli, I didn't mean to walk on you. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, the fact that he was such a prankster, were you ever around when he played a prank on someone, or was you the victim of a prank at one point as well?
I have not been the victim of an Eli prank. I have avoided that fate, but I was definitely around one day when I believe it was Sean who had brought his suit for our show and was just kind of looking feverishly for it and couldn't find the pants. Like the jacket was in there, and he was like, did I forget the pants? And Eli's just sitting there at the cafeteria table, just
watching
one look at him, saw his face, and he's like, damn it, again.
He got him. He got him again.
He's got his football pants on.
With these little subtleties, like it's like a kid who's like, all right, let me just see, like I don't know, banana in the tailpipe type of pranks, you know?
Right.
All right. That's Beverly
awesome.
Hills Cop reference there.
Yeah.
All right. I got one a little bit a different vein, because it's the elephant in the room, right? You know, we haven't had a lot of success for 10 years, right? Everybody, we all understand, we're very rational. We're also pro organization here. All the guys on my team, like when I bring them in, they're all based on like, we're fair. We believe in the team, the organization, what they're doing, and we try to get behind it as best we can. It doesn't always work out. You're frustrated about a lot of things, but I'm kind of just curious on, again, a lot of changes in 5 years. I mean, 3 coaches, staffs, you know, so I guess where I'm going at is like, do you personally feel a difference in what you do and the team coach to coach? Like, does it feel different? Say like the 2 years you were there with with Shermer, and you also alluded to every year you've gotten more responsibility and access, and they're letting you create really great content, and you're becoming more of a fabric. So you're closer probably to it than you were 5 years ago than you are now. Does it feel different from Shermer to Judge? Like, do you notice it?
Yeah, I mean, and even back to McAdoo, it's, there's a definite difference and definite change over the years, because each coach comes in and not only does he have his rules for what time practice is going to be and where they're going to hold this meeting and what have you, but he also has rules for, what time people are going to have access to the cafeteria. And for, again, before COVID,
Sure.
I don't have an office. I used to just show up and post up at a cafeteria table and sit there in the middle of the lunchroom and do my work. And so guys would come and go and eat and all that kind of stuff. And we've been fortunate that the coaches that the Giants have brought in have been really open to understanding the role of myself and our other team media members that said, okay, you know what, this is okay. Because some organizations like the Patriots would never allow that. Or, the Detroit Lions, when they hired Matt Patricia, they said, okay, well, from these windows, all staff that's not team can't be in the lunch area or things like that. And so there's different rules that each coach brings into a building, and they say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's how much integration we're going to have. Also, here's how much access you're going to have as a media member. And I think a lot of my personal growth has been more about, my earning my boss's trust and him being like, okay, because he's always used to joke. He's like, you're a basketball girl, but we can teach you football. I was like, I know football, but it's like, it takes a little while to earn the trust of, it's like, okay, you can do this. And so that was always great. But, we've been fortunate, Joe Judge, for example, unprecedented how much access he gives us. The Joe Judge report you see on MSG, he spends, 15 minutes in there with Bob and Carl breaking down tape and going through an offensive, a defensive, and a special teams play each week. And I think that is incredibly valuable access. I've learned so much watching the way that he sees the game. And I think that's kind of a cool thing to have, and some coaches are a little bit less open to having the regular interviews, and some coaches are more into the media availability, and some coaches are, less open to having the players accessed, and some coaches are saying, okay, yeah, we can do this, we can do that. And so it's just a personal preference, I think, year in and year out. But I don't think that there has been anybody that has come in as a head coach that I've seen that has affected my job negatively, if that makes any sense.
How about environment though? So, again, we're all really striving for some wins. If the fan base feels pretty beat up over 10 years on, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So what's and if it's uncomfortable, you don't have to tell me. I'm just kind of curious, like, does it feel good to go to work every day? I know it's an awesome organization, but do you feel the tension that's building? Because like yesterday, and I know we're not going to get too much into it, but everyone's really deflated after what happened yesterday, because we all know how well they played against, the Washington football team. Like, you saw it. It was right there for the taking. You thought it was going to spill over. So like what's that work week like? You come off of Washington going, we're this close. And now you're like, and again, I can't speak for both you guys, but my team, we talk daily on what we're going to do, what kind of content we're going to create. It feels really far away only 5 days later. So I was kind of curious on like what the environment is going to feel like when you go to work tomorrow.
Well, I will say it does. I mean, you'd be obtuse not to notice the weight of it, right?
Sure.
Nobody wants to start 0-3. Nobody wants to be losing games, especially the way that this team has. They've been in it. They were tied at 14 with 4 minutes and 13 seconds left to play. Yeah. They had a chance to get the win. They had a lead in the fourth quarter. They had a chance to get the win. So that's hard. And I know that, I feel that, but at the game on Sunday, I was on the field pregame, and one of the fans in the stands asked me, he's like, hey, you know what? I watch you on postgame. He goes, you always seem like you're such a good mood. Like, you're always so happy. He's like, and we're losing. I don't know how you do it. I was like, until we start winning. Because you know what I always say, it's like, I love my job. And if you were to tell me, hey, you know what, we're going to give you a chance to cover an NFL team. They're not going to be very good, but you get to be a part of it. Who's saying no? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I don't want to do that job. I only want to do it.
No, thanks.
Hold down.
I'm gonna pass on that one.
Right.
Absolutely.
I love my job. I love what I do. This is the job that I wanted to do growing up. This is a job that I went to school for and I strive for. And like now I'm building towards something that is, part of like, this is what I want to be doing. So I think it's a little bit of perspective too. Like, yeah, it is a bummer and it is not ideal for the way that this team is playing. And almost is one of the worst words in the English language because they almost won that game. They almost had that interception. He almost made that catch. He almost had that fumble. Like that is the Giants season in a nutshell so far. Outside of, weeks 2 and 3 is just almost. And if they had just a millimeter here or an inch there, things would be very different. And it's very frustrating, but it's also kind of encouraging because those tiny little things can go either way. It's not like, week 1 was hard to watch. That was very hard.
I remember I was sitting there. It was hard.
Oh,
I'm gonna give you speed round. There's 7 easy questions for you.
Okay.
All right. Speed round. Go.
Oh, boy.
All right. Who's the best Giants story? This is actually our 50 yards right now, right?
Okay.
This is exactly. We're walking. Who's the best Giants storyteller? Who's the guy that absolutely tells the best stories? Anybody in your 5 years. It doesn't have to be current team. Stumped you.
No, I'm in a toss up between Deal and Sean.
Okay.
Really? Okay.
Well, you can give both, by the way. It's quite fun.
Yeah. There's no wrong answers on the Giants guy.
Absolutely not. Definitely not.
All right. Best dresser. 5 years in 6 years now in running. There's got to be one guy who's absolutely stands above everybody else.
I'm gonna give that trophy to Sterling Shepard.
Wow.
All right.
I never thought.
Gotta love Shep. All right.
Shep's got that like subtle swag.
Okay.
When it comes to the classics too.
The guy who's always happy.
Okay. I think rookie year, that would have been Shep. Rookie year, everyone called him Teeth because he was always smiling, but then he kind of got into that veteran mode and he just was like locked in now. I think now we're going to go Dalvin Tomlinson.
Really?
Or Lorenzo Carter. Lorenzo Carter is also one of those guys that he's in that same like it's raining Skittles vibe. It's always a good vibe, right?
Oh my God, raining Skittles. Awesome. I'm totally stealing that. All right. Most imposing or maybe intimidating player, like when you first meet him, you're like, ooh, he may just be angry, or anyone who like just maybe someone you were like, that's an angry dude.
I don't know about angry.
I'm trying to think of a good.
Well, I guess intimidating.
Yeah, intimidating.
I'll admit, like I was intimidated when I first met Eli because his presence is so big that I'm just like, can I talk? Are we okay?
Interview.
Okay, well, we'll do this later. Good talk. No,
Where'd Madelyn go? She's running down the hallway.
I know he's the nicest guy. He's the warmest guy. He's so polite and kind to everybody. But because of just his presence, you just look at him and you're like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do with my hands.
Craig, let me throw one in here.
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
Go for it.
What personality do you wish was still part of the team that is not anymore?
Great one.
It's a great question.
Not anymore. Let me think about some of the guys that have come out. Shoot,
you mentioned Tomlinson. I mean, he seems so lovable, that guy. I mean, from the outside, I feel like he's probably up there.
Dalvin's a great personality. He was a presence for sure. And he was somebody who was just very just kind of happy, but also very like, when you saw him flip that switch, it was like, oh, I didn't know you had that in you. Also, did I say Dalvin? I had meant to say Dexter Lawrence with the Posy Vibes thing.
You did say
that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I figured it was Dexter. Don't worry.
Yeah, you know what? It's one of those slips because those two,
sexy Dexy, as he says, right?
Dexy, the pink pterodactyl, but those two were always together, and names.
Don't worry.
My dyslexia is showing because the name is.
We won't.
Do you still get like the nervous, like, get the little like like a little nervous in your stomach, the butterflies each time you go on air, or when you interview a player at this point?
I think not nervous as much as I used to, but I definitely get that like rush of like,
That's why you do it. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. And
if you don't,
sometimes when I do it and like, they count us out a show and because they're in my ear at the end of the show. All right, 90 seconds left, 70 seconds left, 60 seconds, like counting, yelling, 15, 10, like making sure I wrap it up. And like, I will look at, whomever my co-host is, and I'm like, did I say the right thing? I blacked out. I don't know.
Listen, when we saw you yesterday, at least when I saw you recording yesterday, no lie, you were waving to the people next minute. It was like, we're back. And you were laser focused. And I'm like, man, how does she do this thing? This is insane.
I just lost it.
I was walking up the aisle right by that show too, and I opted not to interrupt the show, just for the record. Sorry. I did not yell or throw things.
When that game ended, I beelined out of there. I was like, I don't want anyone to see a grown man cry. I was like, I can't do. I was completely drained.
Instead, you were in your car in traffic listening to Sinead O'Connor.
I was in a fetal position on the Turnpike South. All right. Favorite moment working for the Giants. Favorite moment. One moment that she's like, could never beat that moment.
Gosh, this is hard. I think it was really cool the night the Giants drafted Saquon Barkley.
Cool. I would never imagine you would say that. That's a great answer. Why?
Because, I think there was so much about him. There is so much about him that's just a special guy, and not just as a player, but as like a member of the organization.
Yeah, person.
And as what he is going to bring to this team over the years. And I think we've seen flashes of it. And I hope that we get a chance to see the full potential of it, because being there the moment that his name is called, being the first person to interview him once he knows he's a New York Giant, walking through and kind of watching him go through the, signing the Panini cards and the car wash of media availabilities, and thinking super like, cool. This is the first moment that this guy's a New York Giant. And Dave Gettleman had said, you draft a guy number 2 overall, you got to envision him wearing a gold jacket someday. And in, 40 years, 50 years, whatever, if he's inducted into the Hall of Fame, and I'm going to just always remember that day of being like, and whether or not he's to the Hall of Fame, if he wins a Super Bowl, whatever happens, like, that's like the start of something. And just being able to see the start of something that, has already brought so much joy to Giants fans and has had some ups and downs. Of course, nobody wants to see him go through that injury and all that, but he's, building back up. And I think there's a lot of Saquon to come, hopefully. And so, I don't know.
We don't want to say the I word, injury, because I'm also crying with Blake Martinez right now. I can't do it. All right, last one on the 7, and then we'll fly into something else. This is my favorite question because I'm super excited for this one. So if I gave you an unlimited budget, okay, and access to any talent you wanted, what kind of content would you create?
Emmy Award-winning content.
But I mean, what is it? You want to do like?
Don't get
you
specific,
want my ideas
right?
here? You want my ideas? You're trying to. He goes, this is my favorite question. I love asking this question.
Because I'm always just curious.
Produced by Craig Santucci.
Yeah. Hang on, wait a second.
Get the pen. Listen, I'm ready to go. I got the notes. I'm ready to go. I got it.
I'm always curious if if they, because I'm sure like sometimes they're like, hey, it's not in the budget, or we don't have the time. Like if like the Giants were like, look, we want to do like, would you make a movie, a documentary? Like I'm always just curious, like, what could they, if there was no parameters, what could you and your team do? And that's kind of where I was going, because like fans always want access and some cool stuff. Like, I'll give you a reason why. So Carl Banks, when we interviewed him, he said, and he was awesome with us. My daughter's going to Michigan State. We have a little connection. He said, Craig, you remember in like 1988, they had a starter commercial with like Mark Messier, Karl Malone, might have been Jimmy Johnson. And I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, everyone remembered that commercial. He says, Jeff, didn't he say he was going to remake that specific one with new players? Do I have it correct?
Yeah.
He's like, I'm going to remake that commercial with all new players. And he goes, and I'll give you the behind the scenes of making of it. And I was like, and all of us, like, we were like, say that again? He's like, you guys are great. We love what you guys do. He's like, we're having fun. He's like, I'll give you the behind the scenes footage. So to me, I'm like, when he had a chance to make a commercial, he's going to remake a 1988 starter commercial. So I'm putting you in that role. Like, is there something, if you can make something really super cool with unlimited talent and the budget for the Giants, like what would it be? And I'm definitely not trying to steal an idea, but I'm so
I just had to give you crap. First of all, shout out to Carl Banks, G3. If you notice this little DKNY Giants licensed gear I got going on right now, they've come correct this year. This is, courtesy of the Carl Banks Foundation. Nice. Foundation, I just mean, this DKNY launch. Any female Giants fans out there that want some quality Giants gear, you gotta get this. This is my plug right here. It's my plug.
Go nuts.
Go for it. Yep.
Yeah, Fanatics, DKNY. You got to look it up because they got some good stuff. But I think, one of the things that I think the Giants do that is under promoted is they have Giants Life coming in training camp, which is like our in-house Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
And it is so good. And I think that
great.
Not enough people get to see it. I think it would be cool to keep it going throughout the regular season as well and show just kind of the behind the scenes weekend. And, they've got Hard Knocks coming in the regular season, which I'm going to be curious how that goes with the Colts this year. How much of that is going to like tip the hand of like, okay, opposing team's going to be watching this. Like,
yeah,
what that is that what
Yeah.
But I think that's one of them. And I just think I love that kind of stuff that shows you the access of these guys off the field, who they are, because so many people are looking at the stat line and looking at, that also that broke my heart yesterday with the fans booing Evan Ingram. His sister was in the stands. Like his family was there. Like this is the first game he's back from a really bad injury and he worked his tail off to get back on that field. And he made a couple regrettable plays, but like Giants fans do better. Because like this is a guy who has a sloth calendar in his locker and would let me come over every month before he turned the page to see what the next yoga sloth would be. And like he's a good dude. He works his tail off. I think like we don't need to be booing this man, but I think a lot of people need to be reminded that these guys are all people. These guys are all human. Yeah. These guys have a lot more going for them than just what we see in between the lines.
It's a great point. I had a conversation with a guy on Twitter today, and it was about that specific situation. And like you kind of get caught in between these two scenarios of, the guy that I was having the conversation with said, I spent $900 to bring my family to the game. He's like, we won't be able to do anything else for the next couple months. That's what I spent my money on. He's like, and I just want them to do what they're supposed to do. He's like, even if you lose, do what you're supposed to do. And I was like, because I get it. I get the both sides. Like, man, like you make a lot of money. You're a pro. You're awesome. And then I got the like, all right, man, like I'm sure he wanted to catch the ball. Whatever he's going through right now is definitely on the field. They want production. Everybody wants to win. It's hard. It's hard.
Let me say that you got to have a human element, I believe, to the game. And I think people are missing that.
It's hard.
Because I also will think like every single person out there, whether you're a pro athlete or a podcaster or an accountant or do whatever you do in your life, you've made a mistake at your job.
Sure.
And your paycheck has nothing to do with that mistake. Yep. Whatever comes in the direct deposit does not affect how that bad day went. Or if you didn't get any sleep because your kid was sick the night before and you came in and you missed something and you made an error, your paycheck, it doesn't matter how much you're paid, it doesn't matter whatever. It's
real life.
It's real life. And just because people are paid a high salary and train really hard and work really hard towards something doesn't mean they're not human.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great way, man. It's a great
way to make us feel bad, Madelyn. Jeez.
Listen,
you guys I know weren't booing. I feel like you guys were.
I'll tell you what.
I didn't like the Mara one either. I didn't like the booing at all. I didn't like the Mara.
I did not boo Mr. Marin. I was quite
definitely not.
I mean, it wasn't like the whole Roger Goodell. It's become like a tradition to boo, the commissioner. I was a little taken back by again. I get your perspective is well taken, and I appreciate that. Thank you, because I makes me definitely maybe rethink my position on maybe giving the guy a break. The marathon caught me off guard completely. Like I was like, wow, like
be disappointed.
Be classy, people.
You can be disappointed. I'm disappointed. Nobody wants to see a guy not do his job.
Right.
But, you know, there's a way to go about it. But again, and the same thing, you know, it's just tough. But the frustration is there, and I get it. And people
especially Mr. Mara doesn't catch the passes. He doesn't throw the ball. I mean, like, he's dishing out billions of dollars to do whatever. I was like, wow. I honestly, I don't.
I
usually...
laughed. I didn't boo, but I just couldn't believe the whole stadium knew to boo him right there.
Everyone's copping the plea since Madelyn Burke said something. Right? I'm like, I didn't boo. No, I didn't.
No, I really didn't. My friends will tell you I did not.
It wasn't me.
I got my friends here. They got, you know, they'll tell you.
What's that old Eddie Murphy thing? Wasn't me.
Right. Wasn't me, Madelyn. No, it wasn't me. I wasn't booing.
I saw you break into my house.
Get caught up in the moment. I'm not faulting you. I'm just offering a different perspective, something.
That was a great one.
No,
that was a great one for sure.
Has me. I feel I'm ashamed of myself right now.
and that's a perfect segue.
All right, what do you got for me? I know you got something in the pipe, Derek, and I know she doesn't want to hang out with us all night. So
right, that's sure. Yeah.
No, I'm good. Maybe just off ball. What do you think this team needs to do? Is there a little thing that you think can maybe turn this season around? Because 0-2 is a bad start. 0-3 is usually a death wish. So is there one thing that you could see happening that might be able to turn this season around?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing is those penalties. You know, and some of them, I know that Judge said today he's going to be, you know, submitting a few plays to the league because some of the calls and the
Xavier McKinney hit specifically.
Yeah, or, you know, some of them he said, you know, and I'm not going to get into detail about which plays they are, but if they're going to be called that way, we need to know why so that we can coach that, right? I mean, I was standing about 5 yards from that play that he threw the challenge flag from, and I saw it in live action, and I was like, oh, there we go. It was a catch.
Was that the catch and fumble?
And the fumble and the recovery, and they ruled it an incomplete pass. And then when the review happened, I was like, there's no way they're not overturning it, and they didn't overturn it. And I don't know.
Took 2 steps. Guy took 2 steps with the ball.
So I don't understand that either. And, you know, I've never played in the NFL. And, you know, Joe Judd, I'm sure, is going to say, hey,
you don't have to. You don't have to. You know the game.
So I think that there's some things that you're like, okay, if you're going to be ruling things this way, we want to understand why so we can coach that way. But they got to clean up those penalties. 8 penalties yesterday is just too much. I mean, Sunday does not need to be laundry day for everyone, people. Like,
absolutely.
It's just a lot. And so I think that the fact that, you know, and Joe Judge is a guy who talks about discipline, and that needs to be a priority, discipline, execution, and doing things the right way. And, you know, if things are not going to be called in your favor, fine. Don't give them the opportunity. Don't have those close calls and give them the opportunity to call things that aren't there, you know?
You're right. It always comes down to a couple of plays and those penalties for a coach that preaches discipline. Where is the discipline on the field? But then, you know, Adoree Jackson drops that interception, or
Logan Ryan,
or Jones, you know, misconnects with Darius Slayton the week before, where that would have sealed the game in the fourth quarter. Like, they're right there. Every week they're right there. But like, that was the story of last season. Like, the close games they were in. I don't know why this team just can't get over the hump, and I don't know. They don't know how to win yet.
I might have to just bring some sage to MetLife, you know.
Let's try it.
Please. Let's try something here.
I don't know if that's allowed, but we'll find out. I'll let you know if they kick me out.
Oh my goodness.
Well, listen, when you look at the game stats, right? They're in the time of possession, they have more yardage. It's just the ugly thing. The ugly stat on that game stat is the penalty. So I guess if once they clean that up, trust me, I'm sure we'll figure it out from there. At least I hope so.
I mean, if you clean up those penalties, that's 53, 58 yards right there. And that's also possession. That's also time. I mean, they won the time of possession battle. They won the overall yardage battle. They just didn't convert that. And then the red zone too. They got to figure out how to execute. Get down there. They don't have a problem getting down the field. But as much as I adore Graham Gano, and I'm very certain he's going to beat Vinatieri's 44 consecutive field goal record this season, I think that, you know, they need to be able to get into the end zone and not.
3 of 9. 3 of 9 so far this year in the red zone. That's just, it's not good enough.
Especially for a team that just signed Kyle Rudolph, who's like a red zone machine.
No red zone targets. You know, I don't know. They're not using their best pieces, I think, to the best of their ability.
According to Sean O'Hara, he's Rudolph the red zone reindeer is what he'll
nice.
say.
That is nice. I gave him credit when I put that on Twitter one day.
Absolutely. He's the man.
Last question. Jason Garrett's taken a lot of heat for the play calling, the scheme. And we alluded to it earlier, where so close against Washington, you figure that was going to kind of spill over into the next week. And it is the topic of Twitter. We've all had some fun with the hashtags of fired Garrett now, and it's just out there, right? So it's out there, whether you buy into it or you're not. I was wondering, what's the overall thought from a media perspective right now? Is it something where you get more time? Is it something that, you think they'll work its way out? Or is it something that maybe doesn't fit? He is very different, ex-head coach, older than these very young coaches. Like, is it maybe an opportunity he doesn't fit the mold and it's a round peg in a square hole, or anything along those lines?
I think that, when things aren't going right, people are looking for a reason, and they're looking for one thing to point at and say that if we fix that, it's all better. If we fix that, it goes the right direction. I don't think Garrett is that. I think there's a myriad of problems. I think, if you look at the way Daniel Jones has played the last 2 weeks, no turnovers, no fumbles, it's been great. The pass protection has been very strong with this offensive line collaboration here. He's been able to have time to get rid of the ball. The run blocking is what the worry is. They got to work on that. They got to get the run game going and create those holes for Saquon and work together with that. That's kind of counterintuitive to what we thought going into this season.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So I don't necessarily the plays that are being called. I think it's the way that things are kind of coming together and the pieces that are coming together and how they're functioning. And they're all still kind of figuring it out. They've had so many injuries so far early this season. Nick Gates going out was huge. That's a big blow. He's a captain of this offense. Not only that, the center. So changing your center in the middle of the game and still being able to develop that chemistry. The fact that this team has been able to put the points on the board that they have should also be something that is looked at. Because, remember a couple of years ago, they couldn't get to 20. Last week in Washington, they were almost at 40 if, a couple of things had gone another direction. So if Darius Slayton makes that catch, if a couple of calls go another direction, they're putting up a 40 ball.
Heartbreaker, and heartbreaker. Well, I thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank you. Great to meet you.
Yeah,
same. And Madelyns, if you have more time, please come on back. This is your home now.
Anytime. I promise I won't judge y'all for your boozer cheers.
No, I'm like totally shamed into like completely like rethinking this whole thing.
She made us feel legit bad because we were all so pissed and we're like, oh yeah, they are humans.
See, I didn't do it.
Yeah, she dropped the straight face, look right at him and was like, his sister was in
That's actually what got me.
I was like, was in attendance.
And now I'm like
cheering on her brother.
Jesus.
Playing against the team they grew up rooting for, wearing full Giants gear, his whole family.
Wait, was that his team growing up? Is that what you're alluding to? They grew up watching the
Yeah, they were from that area, and she grew up in Atlanta, and all that stuff. So yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
Also, I can't get off of this podcast without mentioning Azeez Ojulari. He grew up a Falcons.
Yes.
3 sacks, 3 games to start his career. Just keep it going. Keep it going.
He's on pace for 17. Don't forget.
Please.
Yeah. Well, we get knee deep in this stuff all the time, and we've all realized that this is a first round pick that you got in the second round, and like one seems like a good cat. We all watched the video of him with Andrew Thomas in his draft party, like pumping fists in the background, like just good family, good people. I think he's actually, not to get like sentimental, but I think the fans are going to really like him. You're going to start seeing jerseys with his name on the back because he's doing whatever he can do to get on the field. He probably needs more snaps, I would have to think too, because right now, you just said it. Kid's a rookie and he's producing.
There you go. It's like they say in the Drew League in LA, no excuse, just produce.
Listen, I think Madelyn has to come back on.
Write these down. She keeps dropping all this stuff.
She's dropping his jewels. But I think Madelyn has to come back on and do the Rush podcast and do this rapid fire that we do. She's good, man. She is good. We got to put her on the panel.
Uh-oh.
We can go. When we go live on Twitter, it gets crazy. It
gets crazy. Yeah, it gets a little.
You've probably done it before. It's just some guys are really good at it. We talk too much.
Oh yeah.
Madelyn will be fine. She'll fit right in. Let's hope we can get that one day at least.
It's me. That's my fault. I talk too much. All right, so you're listening to another episode of Giants Guys. That's Eli. That's Jeff. That's Madelyn. We are going to produce it up, fire it out tomorrow. It's usually up about 12 o'clock, maybe 1 o'clock. Thank you very much for hanging out with us. We hope you will entertain coming back again.
1000%.
And maybe we'll do a double dose and get our boy B London to come on at the same time.
That's my guy.
So he shot my tailgate last week. We did 4 hours of filming with Brandon last week.
Love it.
Yeah, because the story was that Alex Webster, who played for the Giants in the 50s, used to work for Ballantyne Beer. And yeah, so in the off season, he had a job selling beer. And he used to go to this bar in Patterson. He said, if you carry my beer, I'll get you season tickets to the Giants. So he put season tickets on the side. And exactly. Well, everyone who went to the bar put in cash. They went and got 40 season tickets. They had money left over. They rented a school bus and they had money left over, and they got ham and cheese sandwiches with mustard, and you had nothing else. So that's what it was. And 2 cans of Ballantyne beer. 60 years later, it's the same 40 families.
I love everything about that except for ham and cheese with mustard.
Well, you're talking about the 50s, and that's all they had.
That's fair.
Those guys just ate mustard all the time.
Yeah. So Brandon and I are walking through the parking lot. He's like, you got any people? I'm looking for a featured story. And I'm like, yeah, I got one. I'm like, Alex Webster selling beer gets 40 season tickets for my group. He's like, what?
Is this a school bus in Whippany? Oh yeah, I've heard all about it. I love it.
Yeah, so I took him to Whippany, where my chef Anthony has a kitchen. So we did 2 hours of prep work there, filming all the food and stuff. And then the next day he did the tailgate, and we brought like 3 generations of people. We had granddaughter, daughter. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And the technical people, I think was it Jose? The guy who filmed it.
Chris Petrocoro.
No, the guy who held the camera was I'm pretty sure his name was Jose.
If you're wrong, we better fix this in post.
I'm just saying.
We're cutting this out.
We're cutting this out. Good.
Because if his name was Carl, you're in big trouble.
Could have been.
Yeah, they were awesome. They were awesome. So yeah, so I said to Brandon, when's it gonna come out? He goes, yo, Santucci, it's not TikTok. It takes some time to produce. I'm like, all right. Anyway,
my guy, Brandon, man. I love Brandon.
I don't know when it's coming out, but I'm excited. That's Jeff. That's Eli. That's Madelyn. Thank you very much for watching another episode of the Giants Guys. And we will have her back, and we're going to try to edit this up for you tomorrow. Night, everybody.
Hey.